What you see behind me is one of 3 U-boat pens that were built along the Keroman Peninsula on the west coast of France. K1, K2, K3, or Keroman 1, 2 and 3. There are 3 unique U-boat pens, and I think this was the biggest U-boat base of the west coast of France. Right, let's go along and I'll explain what each U-boat base does. November 1940, Grand Admiral Karl Dönitz moved in this area. Grand Admiral Dönitz was in control of the U-boat flotillas, and he sent in the Todd organisation in shortly after to survey this area to have a look at see if it was suitable for a U-boat pen to be built. And lo and behold, 3 were built. 3 U-boat bases were built here, covering 50 acres between 1941 and 1944. What you see in front of me is K1 or Keroman 1. Now, when the builder started to build this U-boat pen, the bedrock was extremely hard. So what he decided to do was build this one, which is obviously a wet dock, on a slab sort of trellis. Now, behind there, well, that metalwork is there, there's a series of about 9 U-boat pens. Now, what happens there is the U-boats will have come along here, round this way, potted inside there. There's a traverse inside there, like a ramp, that have drained the dock, took the U-boat up into the middle of this, off the back of this pen, towards another pen called K2, which we'll go along later on. The K1 length was 120 metres, the width was 85 metres, the height 18.5 metres, roof thickness was 3.5 metres, and the walls are 2.4 metres. One unique thing about the K1 is that it had one access point from the water into a pen. I may have said before, because at the back of this, it was so hard, the rock, they decided to make a traverse. In other words, the boat would actually go onto like a cradle and then carried up to out the water and to the back end to K2 or into even K1. There's some U-boat pens that they could use for repairs here as well. So let's have a look at the construction of K1 and its wet pen. Well, this is inside the wet pen of K1. This is the only access into K1. If you want to get to the back of it, can you see the back where it says Port à Sec? I'll go around the back and show you afterwards. But this U-boat will come inside here. There'll be a cradle sat here. They would put some big gates that would be raised. I'm assuming raised from the below water. Yeah, I can't see it. They would block all this off. They would drain this down. The submarine would actually sit on a cradle. Then the cradle would be winched up outside there to have some repairs done. So K1 had 5 pens in total. This one was the only access to the sea. The other 4 pens for repairs, which I'll go around the back and show you afterwards. Now look at this entrance here. It looks as though it's the entrance for a gun of some kind. Now, obviously, it's overlooking the sea. This would have been to protect any U-boats that were coming into this area from Allied shipping, really. That wouldn't fire upwards, that would fire across the actual the bay here to give some protection against any Allied attack with the U-boats. Well, you can see some of the mines and the torpedoes that they would have used in the submarines. These mines are obviously not for submarines, they've been dropped in by ships, maybe to try and protect the harbour. Now, no doubt the Germans would know exactly where these things were floating around because they didn't want the submarines to get hit, or any of the ships. And it looks as though these are some of the torpedoes that was used in the U-boats. Looks like in 1942, the Kriegsmarine, which is the Navy, installed a simulator here inside one of these buildings, and the simulator was to help submarines escape the submarines that had been sunk. So they used some part of this complex for that purpose, and then the French in 1953 reopened it and used it for very similar things regarding any of their submarines as well. There's a 15-metre high tower somewhere, and it's called the Davies Tower, and that's what they must have practiced with. I'm assuming that must be full of water. They would go to the bottom and some kind of simulation where they would escape through a hatch or maybe a torpedo tube. Do it that way. It was used until 1995 by the French Navy as well, just for simulating escaping from submarines. Now, top of K1, what we're looking at now, the Nazis installed 3 anti-aircraft guns and barrage balloons to try and stop Allied bombing. It never worked. But the point is the roofs were that thick, even though we reinforced the roofs with what they call a fangrost roof. I'll explain that later on. The Allies never really penetrated these roofs. Nor the U-boats that were based here inside the pens were actually damaged. Now we're going to walk around the back of K1 to look at behind some of the construction of K1, and then also have a quick look at K2, which is immediately behind K1. Now, that base or them pens were not accessible to water. They had to rely on K1 to get access to water. They were set up basically to do a lot of repairs and that. So in other words, there's quite a few pens here that were used for repairs. I think I said before, it's the biggest U-boat base on the west coast of France. The Allies were not very successful at blowing up these U-boat pens, so what they decided to do was, especially in Lorient and Brest, I think it were, they decided to destroy the infrastructure, which is the towns around it. So they bombed the towns, which was much easier target, and they tried to cut off the supplies to the U-boats, you know, for instance, the food, the fuel, the armament, the equipment. And that's what they did. They reckon that the area of Lorient, I think it was 90% destroyed by the end of the war. This base surrendered on the 10th of May, 1945, which, if you know a bit of your history, that's 2 days after the end of VE, which is Victory over Europe. So that's how long they held on for this place. So this is where the cradle would have carried the U-boat up. So it would have come up here on a ramp, because that would have been drained, come up a ramp, and the cradle would have come across. I'll show you that in a minute. Well, these are what you're looking at now are bomb blast doors. So when the submarine was, before the submarine was let out the back end, these have been shut, and then they've been opened just in case the Allies decide to bomb. They are a good metre thick. Now the gantry up there, whether it's actually original from the Second World War, I don't know. They look quite new, unless they've just been painted over. They could have been. They could be the gantries from the Second World War. So there's the back end of K1 with its bomb blast door still intact. Now these pens here for all the pens where the submarines would have gone into to get repairs done and to get refueled and refilled. Now then, if they were going to K2, which is behind me, they'd come across here and they'd have put the submarine, which was on the traverse down there, they'd have transferred it, I'm assuming, straight into a traverse like this here. Now this isn't a U-boat, it's a submarine, it's a French submarine, but they're still using the traverses that were used in the Second World War. There's some conflicting information here. I've read on things Wikipedia where once these submarines were on this traverse from that gap there, in order to get them to K2 or the rest of the pens over on K1, it took 15 minutes to get them onto the ramp and to get them into safe harbour, if you want to call it that. I don't believe that. Another where I saw a recent programme on TV said it was 90 minutes, and that's more likely right, because you think about the size of these things and how slow they had to move them. So I personally think U-boat 90 minutes before it's back into safety. If you want to go and have a look at some U-boats, you're going to have to go to Germany. There's one U995, which is based in Le Bourg in Germany. You can walk through that. Or you can go to Williamshaven, which is very close by. And there's a Type 21 U-boat called the William Burr. You've got to pay an entrance fee, but it's not much, and it's really interesting. And it gives you an insight of what these submariners went through in the Second World War, especially the Type 7 U-boat, because that's the 995. That was the most widely used U-boat in the Second World War. The Type 21 was the very latest one. They didn't really use that much, to be honest with you. K2 is named after a guy called Jacques Stosskopf. Now, Jacques Stosskopf, at the beginning of the Second World War, was the head of this military base at the time, the Navy base. He started collaborating with the Nazis. He said to help them build these pens and stuff like that. His French counterparts, the people that were, hated him because he thought he was a French collaborator. But what they didn't know, he was working for the resistance. And what he'd do every now and again, he would contact the resistance, have a meeting with them. Never wrote anything down. He had a photographic memory. He'd tell them about what flotilla was here, what U-boat was here, what was wrong with it. He'd give all the information on the inside of what was happening here. Later on, the resistance, the group was penetrated, and they found out that Stosskopf worked for them. He was arrested, sent to, I think it was Natsvala, Struthof, and he was executed there. So they've named K2 base the Jacques Stosskopf base.
Now what rolls me?
We're looking at his K3 or Keroman 3 U-boat pens. There's 7 pens in total, or what they call deep water pens. When they first built this set of pens, what you're looking at now, which is this section here, would have been a dam wall. So when the U-boat pens were finished, the dam wall up, so you could access the pens themselves. What you see in front of me is at least 3 sunken boats. These were done by the Nazis. And the reason why they did that is because these boats are actually sunk in front of the U-boat pens. The idea is the Nazis were a bit wary of planes, Allied planes, flying with torpedoes. They didn't want the Allies dropping torpedoes along this stretch here, going across, and there's the U-boat pens, especially the U-boats are actually in them. So the idea was to sink some old ships and create a barrier between any Allies that could drop any torpedoes and hit the U-boats inside the pens. Once the U-boats were actually in the pens itself, this door, what you can see in front of me, would be raised, and raised or shut at least anyway, whichever way it comes. And that would basically seal it off from the outside world. What they could do then was they could actually drain the inside of the pen, and they could start working on it. They could refit it. Any damage that could be repaired. Any submarine, any torpedoes could be reloaded. Anything really. Food, the lot could be supplied behind that door because it'd be a dry pen. A little square block on top would have been an anti-aircraft gun. What you see in front of me is what they call an embrasure. It's basically a machine gun or a mortar emplacement. It's to protect places like this anyway. A lot of the Germans had these in all the structure, the Atlantic Wall, and obviously U-boat pens as well. The idea is obviously to protect it. Now, there's a step like this for a reason. And these are extra protection because they've got timber in. So the idea was if somebody's attacking it and they're shooting with guns, machine guns, whatever, the idea is it's going to deflect the bullets away from that part there, which was the business end of this little hole, or they would embed themselves inside it as well anyway. Now, Germans call them embrasures. The French call them crenelles, which are on the Maginot Line. And the British, in our pillboxes and that, called them loopholes. It looks like the French have put some netting on this. It must be just to stop any falling debris off these, because these are 70-odd years old, so you can see why they're trying to protect people that use this base, because it is still used for different things. Nearly all of the U-boat pens and all the U-boat pens and the Atlantic Wall was built with shuttering. So you can see where the timber is. See the lines of the timbers actually. They'd shore it up with timber, then pour concrete around rebar, vibrated into place so it went solid, and then took the shuttering away. And that was the quickest way of building stuff like this. Out of all the U-boat bases the Nazis had, Keroman 1, 2 and 3 was the most widely used. There was 492 major overhauls of U-boats here, out of about 1,200 in total major U-boat overhauls of all the U-boat bases. So it was well used. I think they could accommodate up to something like 30 U-boats actually in dry dock at that time to overhaul them. See that raised concrete section? That's the anti-aircraft gun emplacement there. There's some new steps going on top. No doubt you can get on top, but it's basically private. This bit below it is private, so obviously I can't get up there. That's a little bit unusual, I think. You've got an embrasure there, as I always say, for a machine gun or mortar, and you've got a hatch there as well. Maybe that could be an escape hatch if the bomb doors get. These doors here get sealed, you can't get out, maybe, I don't know. On every aspect of these U-boat pens and bunkers, any entrance point, there's always an embrasure there. Always. It's the size of them doors, they've got to be 2 foot thick. Easily. What, 60 mil? There's a mechanism so they would have folded from the outside inwards. Oh, it still opens that. Look at that. The size of the doors. What you see in front of me is just the outer walls of the K4, which was started to be constructed in 1943. It was never finished because Allied bombing was so relentless. They couldn't find. It wasn't safe enough to carry on building it. It was being built specifically for the Type 21 U-boat, which was the most advanced U-boat in the war. Near the end of the war, there's also a place called Valentin Bunker that was built for the Type 21 as well. And there'll be a video at some point coming out looking at that as well, or I may have already put it out straight away. These area of Lorient here, Keroman, was used by the Germans at the beginning of the war before these U-boat pens were actually built. They used something, they used a slip that was already here. That was no doubt built by the French. And it went onto a rotating table, the U-boat, and then it was shoved it onto into a thing called dome bunkers. That's one behind me. Now, they're shaped like that because if the Allies were bombing it, the idea was is the bomb hit it, it would bounce off and blow and explode away from it. Another word for dome bunker, as we would call it, would be cathedral bunker or cathedral bunker, basically. Let's have a quick look if we can. Well, there's the entrance to the dome bunker with its great big doors. It's at least a foot or 30 milli thick, them doors. And that's quite possibly one of the cradles it would have sat on before it went inside there. It looks like it's been left here now. I think it's 1940s. Looking at it anyway. Now, that would have been all taken out there. There's a rotating table, which we'll go and have a look in a minute. If you notice on this dome bunker, it's got a square section on top, and that's more than likely going to be an anti-aircraft gun emplacement. There's the second dome bunker, but it's obviously been sealed up. The dome bunker you see behind me was used extensively by the Nazis. Besides bring U-boats, they used to hide like K5 Krupp guns, which you'll find around the Pas de Calais area. Well, this would have been the rotating table. They'd have come from the slipway behind me. The U-boat would have been put onto this. It would have been adapted for carrying U-boats, obviously. And then they'd have been turned round and they'd have faced either that dome bunker or that one over there. This is where they could do major repairs, refitments, and be safe out of way of Allied bombing. Well, this is the slipway that the U-boats would have come up onto some kind of cradle, but you can see that there, it's all been blocked off now. It'd have definitely been sloping up there to get the U-boats out the water. I don't think they'd have used something like that. Obviously that's modern anyway, but I don't think they use anything like that. So it's all been basically sealed off, this section. If you come to visit Keroman U-boat base, it's very easy to get round everything. There's loads of parking spaces, it's all free. You can wander around like we've done. There is a museum there, you can pay to have a tour. I think they do it in English as well as French. I'll try and put some information on the end of this this video of where you can get the information from if you decide to have a look at it. It's really interesting. If you're into history like I am, especially the Second World War, then it's perfect. Because this area, or I should say, Churchill, in a speech after the Second World War, said the most thing that frightened him more than anything else was the U-boat menace. And you can see why. The amount of shipping that sank over a period of about 4 to 5 years. What you see in front of me in 1940 was Admiral Karl Davinci's house that he commandeered in a place called Kerneville, across from Lorient, which is behind me, overlooking the U-boat pens. He moved his headquarters from Paris to Kerneville, September 1940. After the Centenaires raid on the 28th of March 1942, the headquarters was moved back to Paris by March of 1942 because it was deemed too exposed for. All operations regarding the U-boat flotillas and stuff like that were operated from the base of this place. It was converted into a bunker underneath. There was over 80 soldiers guarding this building, and there was 200 workers inside controlling the Battle of the Atlantic, really. 30th of April after Hitler's death, Davinci became the Führer, or the leader of the Nazi Party. On the 23rd of May 1945, the Allies dissolved it. Now that's Karl Davinci's house at the time. Now if you look across, which is just there, between all these boats here, the U-boats there, U-boat pens there, which is probably across there, probably a mile across. A couple of kilometres, not far. Well, I hope you like my little video on the Lorient U-boat base, Keroman Peninsula, K1, 2 and 3, how they were constructed and what they were used for. And hopefully I'll see you on the next video. See you again then. We are directly below, or I should say in the explosive chamber of a fangrost roof.